Speak now to Brendan Byrne, former Australian ambassador to France and to APEC. Brendan, thank you so very much for joining us today here on France 24. Now, if I'm correct, you yourself are from Sydney, so I imagine this attack comes really as a huge shock to you personally.
Yeah, like a lot of French people, I woke this morning to see this news. And at a beach that I know very well, I was born and raised in Sydney, and I spent time at Bondi Beach in March at a restaurant about 20 metres from where the incident, the terrible terrorist attack, we now know it to be, where that took place. And I spoke to my Jewish friends. I reached out to some of them who, like many Jewish people in Sydney, live not far from Bondi. That is the part of the city where a lot of Jewish people lead their lives. And of course, they were absolutely saddened, shocked, and frightened. I think we're not used to seeing this type of attack in Australia. We're not like the United States. We have very tight gun laws, among the tightest in the world. And to see two assailants like that brazenly firing on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, Hanukkah, at people that were picnicking on Australia's most famous beach is just is abhorrent and repugnant. And I think the Prime Minister summed it up well this morning when he said that this is as an act of hate, and it targeted a religious community, our Jewish brothers and sisters.
Now, as a former ambassador, you're of course no stranger to the diplomatic angles, so to speak, behind these incidents. Israeli officials have, of course, as we heard there, placed a lot of blame on the Australian government, if not the Australian Prime Minister directly. Obviously not for the attack per se, but for essentially ignoring anti-Semitism in Australia, especially since October 7th. Is this a fair accusation in your view?
No, it's not. And I can speak a bit more frankly, perhaps, than when I was ambassador. But it's understandable that people who feel hurt and sorrow and sadness feel all sorts of emotions. But if they saw the Prime Minister's reaction today, there was real emotion there. He's from Sydney as well. He knows Bondi Beach, and he's got many Jewish friends. And this was for him a terrible setback for the country. And I think he really dedicated himself and his government to rooting out anti-Semitism. And it's just not correct that our government, our country hasn't acted on anti-Semitism. Among the steps he's taken, he's appointed a new envoy to fight anti-Semitism. And I think the language he adopted today during the press conference, mere hours after this horrible incident, I think really demonstrate his resolve here. I don't think it's helpful to confuse a well-considered position that Australia has taken in international forums around, for example, the recognition of Palestine. I don't think it's right to seek to use that, which was done in good company with the UK, with Canada, and indeed with France, to use that to try to sheet home blame for what was a criminal terrorist act. There is anti-Semitism in Australia. It has been rising like it has been everywhere. Myself personally, I don't think phrases like globalising the intifada and from the river to the sea are terribly helpful. I think people who are caught up in demonstrations aren't experts on this conflict. They're often too silent on what happened on October 7, and they make these chants that gives license sometimes to some of the more extreme elements. And the Australian government is aware of these dynamics, and I think they've done as much as they can to take a strong position against them.
There's also a question, especially as you mentioned, this perception that anti-Semitism is rising, not only in Australia but elsewhere. Everyone has seen the footage of the man described as a hero who disarmed one of the assailants in Sunday's attack. These pictures, of course, then suggesting that there is a sense of solidarity amongst different communities in Australia.
And that's a great point. I mean, he's the man who offers a tiny glimmer of hope in this horrible day for our country. Ahmed El Ahmed, we should say his name. And I understand from press reporting, I live in France, as you know, but I've not confirmed this, but the press reporting I've seen, he's a humble man who owns a fruit shop in the southern suburbs of Sydney. And I tell you what, he's going to have trouble stocking his shelves for the months to come because everyone wants to support him and his business and what he did, because we saw it. He put himself in harm's way for the lives of Jewish people. This is a Muslim, I assume a Muslim man. I believe he's a Muslim man. I saw one of his relatives speaking on Australian TV. And he is rightly, a global hero. That took tremendous courage single-handedly to disarm a terrorist while the other assailant was watching his actions. Incredible bravery. And that's the country I know. It's not the country that certain Israeli politicians have sought to defame. That's the country I know. People come to Australia to leave their conflicts behind, to start a new life, to live together in peace. And that's a reminder of what our values are, not the two criminals who perpetrated this ugly crime of hate today on Bondi Beach.
Former Ambassador Brendan Berne